What's up, guys? Game 7 tonight between the Denver Nuggets and the Los Angeles Clippers. Want to do a little bit of a breakdown for tonight's Game 7. Going to walk through DraftKings and FanDuel here, some of the top projected lineups in the Stokastic Sims, some of the top projected players, and some of the best overall options to be rostering for this game. So if you find this content helpful, like this video. Also, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. And let's get to it right here. Starting with the DraftKings side of things, I've got lineups built out, like I said, for DraftKings and FanDuel. Just going to start with DraftKings and look at the FanDuel side of it in a couple of minutes. So let's start by just looking at the top overall projected lineup by Sim ROI here in the Stokastic Sims. And on the DraftKings side, it is Nikola Jokic in the captain spot. And if you look at the top projected lineups, you got Jokic in a lot of them. So Jokic is in the number 1 projected lineup by Sim ROI in the captain spot, the number 2 lineup, the number 4 lineup, the number 6 lineup. So most of the top lineups, not all of them, but most of them do contain Nikola Jokic. And the lineup here with the highest Sim ROI, it's Jokic in the captain spot with Jamal Murray, Chris Dunn, Michael Porter Jr., Nick Batum, and Russell Westbrook filling out the lineup. For what it's worth, my expectation is that Chris Dunn returns to a bench role today with Nick Batum sticking in the starting lineup. Well, maybe not sticking in the starting lineup. That's probably not the right phrasing there. But last game, Chris Dunn started the first half. Nick Batum started the second half. So I mean more so I think the Clippers stick with what they did in the second half with Nick Batum then becoming a potential top value option for tonight's slate. Also, if you look at some of the top lineups here, most of them are leaving some salary on the table. The top projected lineup by Sim ROI does leave $600 in salary on the table, $200, $100. There's some of the lineups here that use all the salary, but one of the easier ways to create yourself some different lineups is just by leaving salary on the table. If we look at some of the highest projected dupe lineups, you'll see that most of these are using all of the salary. The top 3 lineups with the most dupes are all using the entirety of the 50K salary. So the lineup here that's expected to be duped the most, it's Jokic in the captain spot with Bogdanovich, Derek Jones Jr., Ivica Zubac, Jamal Murray, and Russell Westbrook. And the second most duped lineup, which also leaves uses all the salary, it's Jokic in the captain spot with Bogdanovich, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, Nick Batum, and Peyton Watson. Let's go ahead and look at some of the exposures now. And let's look also at just overall projected fantasy points. And no real surprise here. It is Nikola Jokic projected for 65 fantasy points, leading the way. There is a 20 fantasy point gap between him and James Harden, who has the second highest projection. Not far behind is Kawhi Leonard. He is projected for about half a fantasy point less than James Harden. And you'll see him 44.92 fantasy points compared to 45.49 for Harden. We've also got Jamal Murray in here for 40 fantasy points. Let's look for some of the top projected value options, and that is going to be the aforementioned Nick Batum, 19.2 fantasy points. And we got Chris Dunn here for 15.5 fantasy points. Bogdanovich, 14.11. Derek Jones Jr., 11.27 at $2,200. So some of those players, those are the guys if you're looking to save salary with from a projection standpoint, that's who's going to be making the most sense. If we look at the captain spot now, here's who we're getting the most exposure to. It's Nikola Jokic. Not a massive surprise there based on what some of our top projected Sim ROI lineups were looking like from the lineups page. We do have Jokic projected for just under 30% ownership in the captain spot, making him by far the most popular captain on the slate, but still showing up in more of my lineups than what the field has, getting to him in 40% of lineups, coming in underweight to the field on James Harden in the captain spot, about even with the field on Kawhi Leonard. If you're looking for some lesser owned options, well, one that does stand out here is Zubac. He is 10% owned. I'm a little bit overweight to the field on him. If you're looking to take a couple of real long shot chances, a couple of other players that I ended up overweight to the field to, Christian Brown, have him in 5% of lineups. Michael Porter Jr. also have him in 5% of lineups with 2.7% projected ownership. So there's a couple of lesser owned options for you to be choosing from. In the flex spot, lots of exposure here to a Nikola Jokic, 48%. So if you combine that with his captain ownership, we've got, 88% of Jokic overall. The player we're getting the most of in the flex spot, it is Chris Dunn. Now, like I said, I do have some concerns that he's going to move back to a bench role. And in that event, he's definitely going to end up be projecting for less fantasy points later. Although with that said, his ownership fairly low. So maybe plays well, gets himself extended minutes. And in that case, he would look like an under-owned value option, just 17.9% projected ownership. Just be aware of what the starting lineup is going to be. My best guess is that it's going to be Nick Batum in the starting lineup, but it's just a guess, nothing confirmed. Other players we're getting a lot of in the flex spot, Jokic, already talked about him, Kawhi Leonard as well. And here's Nick Batum showing up as the second most rostered value option behind Chris Dunn. Bogdan Bogdanovic getting run here, as is Russell Westbrook and Jamal Murray. Who are we most underweight to the field to in the flex spot? It is Derrick Jones Jr. So we got Derrick Jones Jr. projected for a 38.5% ownership. I only have him in 18% of lineup. So getting underweight to the field to him, also getting underweight to the field to DeAndre Jordan, who barely showed up in lineups for me. And the more Jokic plays, which stands to reason he's going to play a bunch because it's a game 7, it's not going to be DeAndre Jordan, Nikola Jokic sharing the court at any point in time. So let's say Jokic gets extended to play 44, 45 minutes in this game. Well, that would only leave like 3-4 minutes for DeAndre Jordan, assuming that they even go to a traditional big as the backup. They could just play small ball. So real risk of DeAndre Jordan being a DNP coach's decision tonight and barely getting to any of him. He's just in one of my top 150 lineups. Players were overweight to the field too in the flex spot. Kind of all guys we've gone over at this point. Chris Dunn, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, slightly overweight to Nick Batum as well. So there's a rundown of everything on the DraftKings side. Let's go ahead and look at the FanDuel lineups now. Actually, first thing I want to do is unfavorite my top DK lineups, and now we'll favorite the top FanDuel lineups and see what these ones are looking like. So first, the top overall projected lineup by Sim ROI, it is James Harden in the MVP spot, and then filling out the lineup, Kawhi Leonard, Chris Dunn, Nikola Jokic, Michael Porter Jr., and Nick Batum. Similarly over to FanDuel, or similarly on FanDuel to DraftKings, the majority of the top lineups here, leaving salary on the table. The top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lineups all have salary left on the table. You have to go all the way down to the 8th lineup to find one that uses all the salary. In general, that is going to be something that's even more important on FanDuel, leaving some salary on the table for these single game slates, because there are a lot more dupes typically on the FanDuel side of things. And you'll see here when we sort by dupes, none of the most heavily duped lineups are showing up in the top 150. Lineups that are expected to have the most dupes on FanDuel. This is actually kind of surprising, a Zubats lineup, but Zubats, Christian Brown, Nikola Jokic, Michael Porter Jr., James Harden, Nick Batum. The second most duped lineup on FanDuel, Nikola Jokic, Norman Powell, Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr., James Harden, Nick Batum. And the third most duped lineups, all of these across 5,000 lineups, were duped at least 40 times. Nikola Jokic, Norman Powell, Christian Brown, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Russell Westbrook. Also, take note if you haven't played FanDuel single game slates in a while, they did change their format to make it more similar to DraftKings. So there's no longer like the MVP, the pro, and the star spot. It's now just the MVP spot over on FanDuel. Exposures, starting with the captain spot, we have the most of Nikola Jokic. He is in 36% of lineups, and just like over on DraftKings, FanDuel does now have the salary multiplier in the captain spot. But we've got Jokic showing up most frequently, and this is something that does dictate some of the changes in ownership, where in last year's format for FanDuel, Jokic probably would have been like 60 to 70% owned in the MVP spot. But now because of the salary multiplier and he's 25,000 in that spot, only 26% owned, but still getting myself overweight to the field to him here. Also getting a little bit overweight to the field to Jamal Murray, 13% of him, where he's projected for 11% ownership. If you're looking to be contrarian in the multiplier spot on FanDuel, not too many great looking options. If you want to go with a really cheap punt, you could roster Chris Dunn for $4,200 in that MVP spot. So he's only projected for 0.9% ownership. It will be a very contrarian lineup. He did show up in 5% of my top 150 lineups here. In the flex now, same deal. Getting to a good amount of Chris Dunn to save salary, similarly to over on DraftKings. He's showing up in a ton of lineups for me as a contrarian option to save salary with. Nikola Jokic is a pay-up option, is showing up in more than half of lineups. And then we've also got Jamal Murray, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, all around 40% owned. So not quite as much as Nikola Jokic, but there isn't that much separating the next tier of spend-up options of Murray, Harden, and Leonard. All of them pretty comparably owned in my lineups here. Other players who are showing up as salary-saving options, Christian Brown, also Michael Porter Jr., he's only $5,200 over on FanDuel. And then Nick Batum, although I am underweight to the field to him here, although keep in mind this is likely to change if he was to be confirmed as the starter, which is something that I do expect is going to happen later on in the day. So underweight to the field to Batum, Also underweight to the field to Norman Powell, Derek Jones Jr., and Bogdan Bogdanovic, most notably over on FanDuel. All those players in the flex spot, I am at least 5% underweight to the field to them. Players we're overweight to the field to, Chris Dunn, Nikola Jokic, and that's it in the flex spot. There are no other players am I overweight to the field to relative to our projected ownership. And that's the rundown. Quick 10 minutes here. Tried to give you guys everything you need from player projections, ownership, and all that to build yourself some winning lineups on FanDuel and DraftKings. If you like this video, like, follow, subscribe. If there's other input you want, this is something new I haven't done before. So if there's anything else you would have liked to see me do in the video, leave me a reply, leave a comment. I would like to see what it is that you have for suggestions, because we do have a lot more one-game slates coming up in the playoffs, and I want to make sure I'm giving you guys some of the information you need. Other than that, good luck and enjoy Game 7.